Xavier Vance didn't believe in fate, but if it existed, it had an awful sense of humor because the woman currently holding a half-eaten cupcake and laughing with frosting on her nose was the last person he should be staring at. He stepped back, adjusting the cuff of his tailored navy jacket as a child darted in front of him. The kid, maybe 5 or 6, messy brown curls bouncing, grabbed the woman's hand and tugged. "Mom, I want another one." She laughed again, and that's when Xavier saw her smile. It hit him like a punch to the chest. Clean, bright, real. Not the kind he saw at boardroom tables or charity galas. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't practiced. It was warm. And for the first time in a long time, Xavier forgot he was the richest man in the room. All right, she said, reaching into her worn leather bag. "We'll get one more, but then it's veggies tonight, mister." "I hate veggies," the kid groaned. "Yeah, well, I hate folding laundry, but here we are," she replied, gently poking his nose with her finger. Xavier almost smiled. Almost. He'd come to this local charity fair out of obligation. His company, Vance Development Group, had funded the new library wing being celebrated today. He figured he'd shake a few hands, take a few photos, and be out within 15 minutes. But now he was staring at a woman with tangled curls, faded jeans, and a kid who clearly adored her. A woman who had zero idea who he was. "Mr. Vance," his assistant muttered beside him, nudging discreetly. "The mayor's waiting." "Tell him I'll be right there," Xavier said, eyes still fixed on the woman. He didn't know why he walked toward her. Maybe it was the way her son hugged her waist like she was the most important person in the world. Maybe it was the way she didn't try to be noticed, and yet he couldn't look anywhere else. "Excuse me," he said, stopping in front of her. She looked up, blinking in surprise. Her hair was a little frizzy from the heat, her shirt had a glittery unicorn sticker stuck to it, and her eyes were the color of melted chocolate. "I'm Xavier," he said. She gave him a polite smile, clearly unimpressed.
Xavier."
He waited. She didn't say anything else.
That was new.
"I, saw your kid trying to hustle you for more sugar." Bold move. She raised a brow, amused. "You offering to fund his cupcake addiction?" Xavier actually laughed. "Depends how convincing his pitch is." Her son popped up beside her again. "I'm good at math. I can count to 100 in like 10 seconds. "Wow," Xavier said, crouching slightly. "That's impressive." The kid narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "Are you trying to date my mom?"
Xavier shuka.
"Jude," she gasped, turning red. "I'm so sorry," he says, whatever pops into his head. Xavier shook his head, still stunned. "It's okay.
He's got
excellent instincts." She laughed again, and this time, it hit even harder. "I'm Callie," she said finally. "And this is Jude. Nice to meet you both." They stood there awkwardly for a beat, until Jude tugged on her shirt again. "Mom, cupcake?" She glanced at Xavier, then back at her son. "All right, one more. But then we're done." She started to walk away, but Xavier surprised himself by blurting, "Can I join you?"
Callie turned, surprised.
"You want to come buy cupcakes with us?" He nodded, ignoring the incredulous look from his assistant.
"Yeah."
"Why not?" Callie studied him for a moment. "All right, Xavier. But you're paying." He smiled for the first time that day.
"Deal."
The cupcake line took 15 minutes. Xavier didn't mind. He found out Jude loved dinosaurs, hated carrots, and was convinced the moon was made of cheese. Callie teased her son with the kind of love that filled every word. She was sharp, funny, and refreshingly real. "So, what do?" she asked as they sat on a bench, cupcakes in hand. Xavier took a bite before answering. "Real estate. Development." She nodded.
"Cool.
"That pays the bills." He almost laughed again.
"Yeah."
"It pays the bills." She didn't press. Didn't ask which company. Didn't ask how much he made. She was too busy cleaning frosting off Jude's cheek with a napkin. It was the first time in years someone didn't look at him like a paycheck. I should get him home, Callie said, checking her watch. Bedtime's not far off. Can I walk you to your car? She hesitated. You always this forward with moms at bake sales? Only the ones with devastating smiles. That made her pause. Her cheeks flushed pink. But she nodded. All right, rich guy. Let's walk. He didn't correct her. Not yet. They reached her beat-up SUV. The back seat was filled with picture books, a soccer ball, and a crumpled juice box. Jude climbed in, instantly starting a war between two stuffed animals. This was fun, Callie said, crossing her arms. Unexpected. He nodded. You free tomorrow? She laughed. You're really persistent. I'm really intrigued. He paused. Let me take you to dinner. She looked at him, really looked this time. You don't even know me. I know your son adores you. I know you laugh with your whole face. I know you didn't recognize my name, and that was kind of amazing. She tilted her head. You're not just some guy in real estate, are you?
No, a beat.
Are you gonna murder me if I Google you later? He grinned. You might be more shocked than scared. She smiled again, that same smile that had wrecked him the second he saw it. All right, she said softly. Dinner. But somewhere with good dessert. I don't trust people who don't believe in dessert. You're speaking my language, Xavier said, stepping back as she got into her car. As her SUV pulled away, his assistant approached. Sir, the mayor's waiting. I know. Should I cancel tomorrow's investor dinner? Yes. Xavier's eyes stayed on the road, where her car disappeared. Cancel everything. Because Xavier Vance had come to a charity event to shake hands and pose for cameras. Instead, he met a single mom who flipped his world upside down with nothing more than a cupcake and a smile. Xavier had never waited this long for anyone in his life, and yet here he was standing outside a tiny neighborhood cafe that served more comfort than cuisine and checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. A breeze rustled the awning above him, carrying the scent of brewed coffee and cinnamon rolls. The cafe, a local favorite tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore, was not the kind of place he usually dined.
No ballet. No imported marble floors.
No sommelier in sight. But it was where Callie had asked him to meet her, and he hadn't hesitated. He didn't bring his driver. Didn't wear a suit. Just jeans, a gray cashmere sweater, and enough curiosity to fill the entire block. When she finally appeared, walking towards him with a light blue headband holding back her curls and a canvas tote slung over her shoulder, the weight of his day evaporated. She looked like she had just come from a library or maybe a park, and she moved with a kind of ease that felt almost foreign to him. You waited, she said, a little surprised. I said I would. I was half convinced you'd cancel. She raised an eyebrow. Guys who wear watches that cost more than my car usually don't wait past 15 minutes. He glanced down at his wrist and turned it inward. I'm not here as that guy. Well, good. Because that guy would hate the food here. She led him inside, where mismatched chairs and chalkboard menus gave the place a lived-in charm. They found a small table by the window, and before he could even reach for the menu, she flagged down the waitress. 2 grilled cheese specials and the peach iced tea, she said confidently.
Xavier Blinka.
You just ordered for me. You're welcome. Trust me, if you saw the other options, you'd thank me. Unless you're a fan of mystery meatloaf. I trust you. She tilted her head, curious. You say that like you're not used to saying it. I'm not. The tea arrived in mason jars with orange slices floating on top. He took a sip and found it oddly refreshing. So, she said, folding her hands on the table. You gonna tell me who you really are now, or should I just keep pretending I don't know? I'm not trying to hide anything. You didn't exactly offer specifics, either. He looked at her evenly. You didn't ask. She nodded once. Fair. A pause stretched between them. Outside the window, a man walked by with a dog and a baby stroller. I looked you up, she finally said.
Xavier Vance.
Real estate mogul, luxury properties, Forbes list, and the man who bought half of Midtown last year. Sounds like a lot when you say it like that. You own more buildings than I've had birthdays. I also have a terrible golf swing and can't cook anything that doesn't come with instructions. Her lips twitched. So, you're human. Good to know. He leaned forward slightly. You're not intimidated? Should I be? Most people are. I'm not most people. He smiled faintly. That's becoming pretty obvious. The grilled cheese arrived, golden and oozing cheddar. He bit into it cautiously, surprised when it didn't taste like cardboard. I take it back, he said. This is amazing. Told you. You need to broaden your culinary horizons. Are you offering to be my guide? She pretended to think. Only if you can promise not to buy the restaurant halfway through the meal.
No promises.
They fell into a rhythm, the awkwardness easing with every exchange. She told him about the after-school program she helped run at the community center, how she was trying to get enough grant money to expand it for younger kids. And Jude, he asked, does he know his mom's kind of a superhero? She rolled her eyes. Hardly. To him, I'm just the mean lady who makes him wear sunscreen and eat broccoli.
Still.
That's impressive. She shrugged, brushing a crumb from her lap. You do what you have to. He studied her, then not just her features, but the quiet strength behind them. The way she didn't try to impress or dazzle. She was just herself. Unapologetically. Do you always do everything alone? He asked. Her fingers tightened around her jar. Pretty much. No support system? Used to. But life happens.
People drift.
Some disappear. He didn't push. He didn't need to. Her voice carried enough weight to tell him the story behind those words wasn't a happy one. Maybe you need someone in your corner, he said quietly. And you think that someone's you? I don't know what I think yet. She glanced at him, searching his face. You're not like how I imagined you'd be. Disappointed?
No.
Just surprised. Why? Because I figured a guy like you would be bored 5 minutes into a conversation that wasn't about stocks or yachts. I have enough of those conversations to last a lifetime. Then why me? She asked, her tone direct but not defensive. Why are you sitting here, eating grilled cheese and listening to a woman who hasn't had a vacation in 6 years?
He didn't hesitate.
Because you make everything else feel like noise. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't say anything. Just stared at him like she wasn't sure whether to run or lean in closer. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope, placing it on the table between them. What's that? Something for Jude. She hesitated before picking it up. Inside was a voucher for a year's worth of books from a local children's bookstore. Her brows drew together. I don't get it. You mentioned he loves to read. Thought he might enjoy picking out his own. She held the card gently, as if it might crumble. This is thoughtful. I didn't do it to impress you. I know. They sat in silence for a moment, the clink of dishes and low hum of conversation filling the space between them. I don't want a handout, she said softly. It's not. It's a thank you. For what? For not treating me like a headline. She exhaled slowly. You really don't get that often, do you? No, Callie slid the envelope into her bag. I'll tell him it's from a friend. That works. They left the cafe just as the sun dipped below the rooftops, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. He walked her to her car again, though this time there was no awkwardness, just quiet understanding. As she opened the door, she turned to him. I don't know what this is yet. Neither do I. But I'm not good at casual. Neither am I. She studied him again, as if trying to find the catch. But if there was one, it wasn't visible. You still want to see me? I've never wanted anything more. Her breath caught, but she nodded. And then, before she could change her mind, she stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. Soft, quick, but enough to leave a burn. "Good night, Xavier." "Callie." She paused. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. She gave him a look he couldn't quite read, got into the car, and drove off without another word. Xavier stood there long after the sound of her engine faded, the ghost of her kiss still lingering on his skin. For the first time in a very long time, he didn't feel like a man who had everything. He felt like a man who had just found the one thing he never knew he needed. Xavier didn't sleep that night. Not because of stress or business or the usual noise that lived in his head, but because for the first time in years, someone had gotten under his skin in a way he couldn't rationalize or shut out. He stared at the ceiling of his penthouse, the city glowing below like a restless heartbeat. His bedroom, all stone gray and glass, felt colder than usual. Emptier. The skyline had never looked lonelier. He'd spent years building walls so high no one even tried to climb them anymore. But Callie, she hadn't climbed. She just walked up, handed him a grilled cheese sandwich, and saw straight through him. The next morning, he was at the office before anyone else. But his attention wasn't on projections or reports. It was on the folder sitting in front of him. He shouldn't have asked for it. He knew that. Callie had asked for nothing. She'd made it clear she didn't want favors or charity. But Xavier wasn't trying to pry, he just needed to know what she wasn't saying. Not to control her. To understand her. He opened the file. It wasn't much. A few public records. A modest rental history. A part-time job at the community center, a freelance graphic design side hustle she clearly barely had time for. No criminal record. One emergency room visit, likely Jude's, noted under her insurance claim. And then he saw it. A court document. Custody. Sole parental rights granted to one Callie Monroe. Father listed as unknown. He closed the folder like it had burned him. He didn't care about her past. But he suddenly realized he wanted to be part of her present. And that meant confronting the parts she didn't say out loud. Later that afternoon, he made his way to the community center. It was housed in an old brick building with peeling paint and a cracked basketball hoop out front. Inside, it was loud with the sound of children, the scuff of sneakers, and the occasional whistle from a tired volunteer. Callie was at the far end, bent over a table helping 3 girls with art supplies. Her hair was tied up today, a pencil sticking out of her messy bun, and she had paint on her wrist. She hadn't seen him yet. He took a moment just to watch her. Not in a possessive way. Just to understand how she existed when no one was looking. The way she gave her full attention to each child. The way she didn't fake her encouragement or tone it down. She was present. All in. "Hey," he said, finally stepping forward. She looked up, surprised, then wiped her hands on a towel. "You're a long way from your marble conference rooms. Thought I'd trade stocks for crayons today." She gestured to the stool beside her. "Well, we're short on glue sticks, but I can offer you a glitter tornado."
Have survived verse.
She rolled her eyes but smiled. "What brought you by?" "I wanted to see where you shine." "That's a line. Maybe. But it's true." She hesitated, then slid a drawing toward him.
Here.
Jude's art. It's a dragon-frog hybrid. He calls it a drog. Xavier laughed despite himself. Terrifying. Right? Wait until you see the fire-breathing version. He held the paper carefully, then looked back at her. "How long have you been doing this?" "About 3 years. Started as a volunteer. Couldn't afford daycare, so I brought Jude with me. Then they offered me a part-time position." "And the design work?" "That's my late-night hustle," she said, stacking some paint jars. "Pays for field trips and birthday cakes." He wanted to offer to fund the entire center that second. But he didn't. Because she hadn't asked. And because she needed more than money, she needed someone who saw her. "Can I take you somewhere after this?" She glanced around. "I still have another hour." I'll wait. She narrowed her eyes, amused. You're really not used to being told no, are you?
No.
But I'm very good at waiting for the right yes. An hour later, they were driving along the Hudson in Xavier's car, sleek, black, and whisper quiet. She looked out the window, her fingers curled around the edge of the seat. You're not going to murder me, right? She asked, half joking. Because this is how every true crime podcast starts. Only if you consider oysters and jazz a weapon. She laughed, and he turned off at a private road, leading to a secluded estate, one of his smaller properties, a converted farmhouse overlooking the river. It wasn't opulent like his usual haunts. It was quiet,
Warm. Retreat-like.
The moment they stepped out, she inhaled deeply. This is stupid beautiful. I thought you'd like it. Inside, the fire was already lit, and an intimate table sat near the window, set for two. A private chef nodded from the kitchen, already preparing the meal. Callie blinked. You planned this. I plan to see you again. Everything else was just logistics. You're dangerous, she said, easing into the chair.
Why?
Because you make it very easy to forget who you are. I don't want you to forget, but you also don't want me to treat you like the rest of the world does. Exactly. The first course arrived, seared scallops in a delicate citrus glaze. She took a bite and groaned softly. If you're trying to ruin me for regular food forever, congratulations. I'll take that as a win. They ate slowly, surrounded by quiet music and candlelight.
No distractions. No interruptions.
Just them. Between courses, he finally asked what he'd been holding in for days. Can I ask you something personal? She tensed slightly. Depends how personal. Jude's father. You never mention him. She set her fork down, her expression shifting. We were young. Stupid. He left before Jude was born. I haven't heard from him since.
Xavier já o tictanat.
He walked away? He didn't even look back. I don't understand how someone could do that. You don't need to. It's just the truth. You ever think of tracking him down? No, she said firmly. Jude doesn't need someone who left. He needs people who stay. I stay, he said quietly. She looked at him, then really looked. That's a big promise. I don't make them lightly. The final course came a rich chocolate soufflé with raspberries and cream. She took one bite and sighed. Okay, now I'm mad. Why? Because this is officially the best meal I've ever had, and it's going to ruin me forever. Then I'll just have to keep raising the bar. She leaned back, her eyes softening. You know, I didn't think this would go anywhere. What changed? You didn't try to fix me. You didn't offer to make everything easier. You just listened. I didn't come here to fix you. I came here to see you. She reached across the table then, her fingers brushing his. And what do you see? He didn't hesitate. A woman who doesn't flinch when life hits hard. A mother who gives more than she ever gets. And someone who makes me want to be more than I've been. The silence between them was thick, but not uncomfortable. Charged. Honest. When he walked her back to the car later, the wind had picked up, brushing strands of hair across her face. He tucked one behind her ear, and she didn't pull away. I was wrong about something, she whispered. About what? I thought nothing about this made sense. But it does. Somehow it really does. Then she leaned up, kissed him slow, certain, and without hesitation. Xavier kissed her back, grounding himself in the truth of it, in the quiet certainty of her lips against his. Not because he was a millionaire who wanted what he couldn't have, but because, somehow, this woman had made him forget about everything he thought he wanted and showed him what he actually needed. And that terrified him in the best possible way. Callie stared out the window of her apartment, the city pulsing below like a living thing. Somewhere beyond the skyline, Xavier was waiting. She hadn't told Jude yet. Not everything. Not yet. How could she explain to her son that the man who'd made grilled cheese taste like a five-star meal and who remembered every small detail, she let slip the one who never made her feel like she had to be anyone but herself was also the same man whose name was printed across half the skyscrapers in Manhattan? She hadn't kept it from Jude out of shame. She'd kept it because for once, something this good didn't have to be complicated. It didn't have to be explained or justified. It could just be real. But now, everything was about to change. A knock at her door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Xavier standing there, not in a suit, not in designer anything. Just a dark Henley, jeans, and a look in his eyes that made her heart skip. "You're early," she said. "You sounded nervous on the phone." "I wasn't nervous. You were pacing." She stepped aside, letting him in. "You could hear that? I know what it sounds like when someone's walking in circles because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing." She crossed her arms. "And what if I do say the wrong thing? Then I'll wait until you say the right one." She looked at him, the weight of everything she hadn't said pressing against her ribs. "I've been trying to figure out where this fits. You, me, Jude. Your world's all private jets and penthouses. Mine's used crayons and PDA meetings. You think I haven't noticed? I think you've been choosing not to care." He stepped closer, his voice low but certain. "Callie, I didn't fall for your life. I fell for you." She blinked, the words hitting harder than she expected. "I know what people expect of me," he continued. "They expect polished, perfect, predictable. But you walked into my life with glitter in your hair and a kid who asked if I was trying to date his mom, and suddenly nothing else made sense unless you were in it." She laughed softly, despite the tears that threatened. "I don't even know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything. Just let me stay." She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "I want to. I do. But Jude, he's never had someone stick around. I'm not going anywhere." "Don't promise unless you mean it." "I do," he said. "And I want to prove it." Before she could ask what he meant, there was another knock at the door. She frowned, letting go of his hand and opening it. Outside stood a woman in a sharp navy dress and an ID badge reading Vance Foundation. "Ms. Monroe?" the woman asked. "I'm here about the grant application you submitted for the community center."
Callie blinked.
"That was months ago. I never heard back." "You have now," the woman said, handing her a thick envelope. "Congratulations. Full funding for the next 5 years, including staff salaries, supplies, and expansion." Callie stared at her, stunned. I don't understand. We didn't qualify." "They said they were wrong," Xavier said from behind her. She turned to him slowly. "You did this. I made a call. But the work, that's all you." She looked down at the envelope, then back at him. "You didn't even tell me. I didn't want it to be about me." She stepped outside, motioning for the woman to wait a second, then closed the door behind her. "You can't just fix things like that," she said, voice tight. "I didn't fix anything. I gave them a reason to look again. You earned it." "But people will think." "I don't care what they think," he said. "And neither should you." She exhaled, the anger draining almost as fast as it had come. "You really don't give up, do you? Not on the things that matter." She looked at the envelope again, then back at him. "So, what now?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black box. Her stomach dropped. "Xavier, it's not what you think," he said quickly, then opened it. Inside wasn't a wedding band. It was a ring rose gold, a single diamond, simple and elegant. "I don't want to rush you," he said. "But I also can't pretend this isn't where I see us going." Her breath caught. "I want to be the man who helps pack Jude's lunch, who drives you crazy when I forget to replace the toilet paper, who's there when you're exhausted and overwhelmed and still managing to be the strongest person I've ever known." She pressed her hand to her mouth. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight," he said. "I just want you to know. I'm here.
For all of it.
She blinked fast, trying not to cry. You're not exactly making it easy to say no.
Good.
She closed the box gently and looked up at him. Ask me again. Tomorrow. He nodded, understanding everything she wasn't saying. That night, after Jude was asleep, Callie sat on the couch, the ring box still unopened beside her. She didn't need time to think. She needed time to believe it was real. And the next morning, when she opened the front door, Xavier was already there, holding a cup of coffee and a chocolate croissant.
Morning, he said. She didn't say anything.
Just pulled him inside, closed the door, and kissed him. When she pulled back, she whispered, yes. He didn't ask what she meant. He didn't have to. 3 weeks later, the engagement was official. Callie wore the ring like it had always belonged there. Jude announced the news at school by telling everyone his mom was marrying a man who owned way too many buildings but made good pancakes. The wedding was small, not because they couldn't afford extravagance, but because Callie didn't want it. She didn't need chandeliers or a string quartet. She needed her son to walk her down the aisle. She needed Xavier's eyes on her as she stepped into a future she never thought she'd have. They married in the garden of the same riverside estate where he'd first told her she made everything else feel like noise. There were no cameras, no press.
Just family, friends,
and a single vow whispered between them that didn't need to be shouted to be real. After the ceremony, Xavier pulled her aside, away from the music and celebration. You know, he said, brushing a curl from her cheek, the first time I saw you, I thought you couldn't possibly be interested in someone like me. She raised a brow. Someone like you?
Too polished.
Too detached. Too used to people pretending. She smiled.
Funny.
I thought you couldn't possibly be interested in someone like me.
Why?
Because I had peanut butter on my shirt and a kid who asked if you were trying to date me. He laughed, tugging her closer. That was the moment I knew I was already in trouble. You're still in trouble, she whispered. Good. He kissed her then, not because it was expected, but because it was the only thing that made sense. And as the sun dipped low behind the trees, casting golden light across the garden, Callie realized something she'd never allowed herself to believe before. You didn't have to be perfect to be chosen. You just had to be real. And loved by someone who saw the beauty in your chaos. Someone who didn't ask you to change a thing. Xavier didn't just stay. He made forever feel like something she could finally trust. Callie stood at the edge of Jude's school auditorium, her fingers curled around the strap of her handbag, watching the chaos unfold with a mixture of pride and disbelief. The spring showcase was in full swing. Papier-mâché planets dangled from the ceiling, children in mismatched costumes buzzed around like caffeinated bees, and a chorus of off-key recorders pierced the air. From the front row, Xavier leaned forward in his seat, legs angled out, a rare tie loosened at his collar. He didn't blend in not with his tailored navy blazer and the subtle glint of his watch, but he wasn't trying to. He was too focused on the stage, where Jude stood next to a girl dressed as Saturn, holding a cardboard telescope and beaming like he'd just discovered Mars. He's getting better at remembering his lines, Callie said as she slipped into the seat beside Xavier. He didn't even need to look at the cue cards, he replied, eyes still on Jude. He was mouthing everyone else's lines too. He gets that from me. I was always a control freak in group projects. I assumed he got that from me, Xavier said, and she nudged his arm lightly. They watched the rest of the performance in comfortable silence, interrupted only by the occasional giggle or whispered commentary from nearby parents. When the final bow came and the room erupted in applause, Jude waved from the stage like a miniature celebrity. Afterward, as Callie tried to navigate the crowd of proud parents and sticky cupcakes, she felt a hand slide into hers. I have something to show you, Xavier said. She glanced at him.
Now.
He nodded. It's 5 minutes from here. Jude can come too. He's already bribed the PDA for 2 brownies and a juice box, so he'll be occupied. Callie found Jude near the refreshment table, deep in negotiations with a mother over the last chocolate cupcake. We're heading out for a bit, she told him. You good with Ms. Lark? Jude grinned, cheeks already smeared with frosting. She said I can help judge the dessert contest. Of course she did, Callie muttered, but kissed the top of his head anyway. Behave. He saluted with a cupcake. Outside, Xavier led her to a waiting car. The windows already rolled down to let the spring air drift through. The drive was short, the silence between them easy now. She didn't need to fill it with questions or assumptions. Whatever it was, she trusted him. They pulled up to a narrow lot between 2 older buildings. Nothing special. A few patches of overgrown grass, an old wooden fence, and a crooked sign that read "For Lease." Callie stepped out slowly. Okay, I'm either about to be wowed or very confused. Xavier gestured toward the lot. This is yours. She turned to him, brow furrowing. What? I bought the property. It's zoned for community use. You'll have full control, design, programming, everything.
No strings, punto.
Her lips parted, but no words came. You once said your dream was to have a space big enough for after-school art, tutoring, weekend workshops for moms. You said it like it wasn't ever going to happen. I didn't think it would. Well, now it can. Xavier, she whispered, stepping closer. This is too much. It's not a favor. It's a foundation. Yours. She looked around the lot again, but this time her eyes filled with something different. Not shock. Not disbelief. Hope. Real, grounded, terrifying hope. He stepped behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders. I know you don't want to be rescued. And this isn't that. This is me standing beside you, not in front of you. She turned to face him. You really mean that? I do. Her voice was quiet but firm. Then I'll build it. But it'll be under my name. Of course. And I'll hire who I want. You'll have full autonomy. And there will be glitter. So much glitter. He laughed. I expected nothing less. They stood there in the middle of a vacant lot, surrounded by city noise and sunlight, and for once, the future didn't feel like a cliff she had to climb. It felt like something she could build brick by brick, with him at her side. Later that evening, back in Xavier's penthouse, Callie kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the sofa with a groan. I'm exhausted. I think I clapped so hard during the performance, I bruised my palms. He walked in from the kitchen, carrying 2 glasses of wine and a small plate of strawberries. You also cried. I did not. You absolutely did. During the part where Jude pointed to the stars and said, We're all made of light. She sighed, accepting the glass. Okay, that part got me. He sat beside her, close enough that their knees touched. I like seeing you dream. You make it easier. They sipped in silence for a moment, the city glittering through the windows. She leaned her head against his shoulder. You know, I used to think life was just about surviving, she said. Get through the day. Make rent. Keep Jude safe. But now, it feels like I'm allowed to want more. You are. She turned her head to look at him. You changed everything. No, he said, reaching for her hand. You did. I just had the good sense to fall in love with you while it happened. Her breath caught. Say that again. I love you. She kissed him, slow and certain. I love you too, she whispered against his lips. Months passed in a blur of construction meetings, school projects, and moments that strung together a life they hadn't dared imagine before. The new community center opened in the fall, and Callie cut the ribbon with Jude at her side and Xavier watching from the crowd, his expression unreadable to everyone but her. He didn't need attention. He didn't need credit. He just needed her. By winter, they were planning a home, not a penthouse or a mansion, but a brownstone on a quiet street with enough space for Jude to have a backyard and Callie to hang art across every wall. One evening, as snow dusted the sidewalks and Jude lay asleep beneath a blanket of stars on his ceiling projector, Xavier stood in the kitchen, rolling up his shirt sleeves as he cooked pasta from scratch. Callie leaned against the doorway, arms folded. "You're really getting good at that. Don't sound so surprised. I'm just saying, if you keep this up, I might start expecting you to do the dishes too. I already hired someone for that." She walked over, slid her arms around his waist from behind. "I'm glad you stayed. I never had a reason to stay before." She rested her cheek against his back. "You do now." They ate dinner cross-legged on the couch, a blanket over their laps, sharing bites and stealing glances. There were no grand declarations that night, no dramatic gestures. Just the quiet certainty of two people who had found home in each other. And in the morning, when sunlight spilled across their kitchen floor and Jude raced down the stairs asking for pancakes, Callie looked across the table at the man she once thought belonged in a different world.
He didn't.
He belonged right here, with her, with them. And for the first time in her life, forever didn't feel like a fairy tale. It felt like the most beautiful, believable truth.